Whether you've been with us from the very beginning of this, now entering its 12th week, enterprise, collaboration, community, whether you're just joining us for the first time. Recognizing all the energy that it takes to actually come online in this way and join something at the hour that it's supposed to happen. How much rearranging of the rest of your day it takes to do this. And then reminding yourself that all the rush or the energy or whatever it took to get here is only the preamble, only the prelude to the invitation to really drop fully into this timeless present moment. No matter what's going on in our lives and in the world and in the pandemic and the huge challenges that we're all facing, all in some ways different, all in some ways not that different. And I'm going to just say a few words and invite you to actually, as with many guided meditations, follow where the words are pointing to right into your own heart. Eyes open is fine, eyes closed is fine, but not getting caught in the words, but following them into your heart. May I be free from inner and outer harm. How does it feel right in this timeless moment? When the mind offers itself that possibility, not merely as an aspiration for some time later, but maybe the very real possibility that that freedom from inner and outer harm is already right here in some profound way. For now. Doesn't mean that we won't at some point be at the mercy of forces that do actually create enormous inner and outer harm. But in this moment, is it possible to actually open, rotate the heart, the mind in such a way that what you're looking for is actually already here, embedded in your own heart? Because it's actually, the freedom is actually a constitutive, seamlessly connected element of your own humanity, your own being in this moment. May I be free from inner and outer harm. And what about may all be free from inner and outer harm? What about that? Can we test the boundaries, self-constructed usually, of our own hearts to actually invoke the possibility that all beings, and in particular our fellow humans, be free from inner and outer harm often that we cause each other. And how does it feel to simply sit with this? Underneath the words, underneath thought, to where the words are pointing straight into the heart. And here's another one. May I have, let's focus on ourselves to begin with. May I have all the resources, inner and outer, necessary for my life to flourish in ways that contribute to the well-being of the world. May I have all the resources, inner and outer, to contribute in whatever ways seem most appropriate and unique to me to be able to contribute to the well-being of the world, to my fellow humans, anywhere and everywhere. And again, underneath the words, what is here? And we're not trying to find something, we're not trying to force anything. This is not an exercise in political correctness. But when we plumb the depths of our own hearts, and the heart is always its essential self in this present timeless moment, what do we discover that often only emerges under emergency or unique kind of settings where our hearts, as we say, break open? And in a sense, actually heal any brokenness in being broken open. Underscore the open part. Can we rest in this openness now? The openness of our own humanity, inclining towards caring for those who are suffering, who are carrying the weight of violence, the weight of injustice, the weight of particularized, institutionalized harm. In whatever forms it takes in your life, in your world, in your country, on this planet, just letting whatever arises in your heart be exactly fine. We're just exploring in the laboratory of our own wakefulness the nature of our own heart, the nature of our own mind. the nature of this love affair we call the meditation practice. And in the same vein, may you and all beings, however you want to hold this, may you and every human on this planet be healthy in every way we understand that word, including socially, economically. Be healthy to whatever degree possible. How does that land? That wordless underneath the words intention or inclining of the heart. May you and all beings, near and far, like you and unlike you, that we make separation and difference over, be healthy, be happy to whatever degree possible, right now, to whatever degree possible. And how does that sit in your heart? Not as wishful thinking, but as a kind of affirmation of possibility of true wakefulness, true kindness, true equanimity, true caring for others, true compassion, and the impulse to actually act in the service of others. Underneath all these words that I've been using, how is it right in this moment for you? And as part of this remarkable community that we've been graced, blessed to participate in over these past now 11 weeks and counting. Just this resting in wakefulness, embodied fully, underneath thought and all the words that I've had to use. Right in this moment. Whole, W-H-O-L-E. and also, of course, part of larger and larger spheres or circles of wholeness, many unrecognized or unrealized, but a completely interwoven interdependence of our lives with the lives of so many others. And the beauty of being in touch in this way, the transparency and openness and broken openness of our own hearts. And the realization of the infinite potential we have to actually thread the needle of our various blindnesses and challenges to learn from each other and grow and heal and remake whatever needs remaking. Laws, institutions, frameworks, to optimize true well-being on this planet, everywhere, and to minimize our own mind's potential to shut down or turn away, or and even in shutting down and turning away, which are kind of passive, not engaging, it's its own form of violence, its own form of ignorance by ignoring things that you might think have to do, don't have to do with you, but they do. Because that you is a construction, a fabrication, an illusion of sorts. And the we is a much more accurate pronoun to describe even the inhabiting of the space of awareness that we're all sharing and that none of us can claim is my awareness. It's our common inheritance and really shared space of heart, mind, life, love. So may all beings be safe and free from inner and outer harm, including you. And what kind of doing has to come out of being to ensure that that actually can become a greater and greater reality. May all beings, including you, learn to live with ease and well-being, and learn to act with ease, intentionality, firmness, in, I'm looking for integrity, ethics, and intrinsic kindness that's not one iota separate from mindfulness, heartfulness. When we liberate ourselves from the more intensive contractions around the singular personal pronouns, I, me, and mine. Just this breath, just this sitting here together, alone in the sense of fully complete as you are, and completely connected. Just this. So, welcome back. I find it to be such an incredibly interesting time that things are changing so rapidly. We're still in the midst of a pandemic that even the experts don't know exactly how to counsel us be to be careful, to navigate the transitions out into the world of greater connectivity or analog shopping rather than digital shopping, or being out there on demonstrations or vacation or whatever it is. In some sense, I find that this moment is, if anything, more confusing than when we started, because there are more degrees of uncertainty. It's like you stay at home, you're all locked up. We're going to have a mitigation retreat. That all kind of makes sense. Okay, how are we going to approach this container that is kind of being, in some sense, forced on us, but that we're also very much saying yes to as a radical act of loving kindness and compassion to damp down on the virus. And we can see the effects of that not happening in various countries and various states in the United States, where the virus is actually increasing in frequency in the population. And a lot of people don't even believe in that. So there's the virus, and then there's the economic impact of this global pandemic, which we don't need to go into in great detail, but it's affecting ultimately everybody, but it's certainly affecting some people a lot more than others right now. And again, that's hard to wrap our minds around. So we have our work cut out for us. And then there's this awakening of a certain kind to something that a lot of people have been awake to for a very long time, but without any traction to actually move the world in the direction of less violence, less institutionalized harm. And all of a sudden, it's like if you're as old as I am, it's like the 60s again in the United States, but on steroids. I mean, and thank goodness. But the 60s came and went, and although things changed, they didn't change all that much. There's a sense that now the wakefulness is not kind of like optional. It's absolutely, categorical, essential. It's not like if you feel like it or if you have the, resources to. No, we have to wake up to a certain kind of endemic, institutionalized injustice that takes many different forms because it's like a disease. It's just like cancer or heart disease. So this has been, of course, the curriculum all the time that we've been together. But now that we're moving into these last 2 weeks together, at least in this particular incarnation of our unfolding retreat, we're moving from this mitigation aspect of it to kind of, okay, the real laboratory is like to go out there into the world and do the all hands on deck on Spaceship Earth retreat, which has always been the real retreat anyway. So in these last 2 weeks, we'll sort of, I will make the attempt and we can all play with pulling certain kinds of threads together, understanding that the uncertainty levels, the stress levels, the suffering levels, in a sense of, are much higher than they were when we started out. And luckily, that doesn't necessarily have to be a problem for us in the sense of making us feel impotent or not capable of dealing with it. What we've been cultivating over the past 11, now into the 12th week, is exactly what is required to create the conditions for transformation and healing, as we've been seeing from the very beginning. And this practice has no beginning, it has no end, and it has no particular form. And it certainly isn't a kind of paint by the numbers, algorithm driven thing. It's like we need to, in some sense, thread our own needles, find our own paths. And the beauty of mindfulness and the framework in which it is being offered, all the different frameworks from all the different mindfulness teachers and traditions that are at the moment out there broadcasting on Zoom and other platforms to an unimaginable level, kind of we're beginning to hear the notes of the orchestra and find out that we may not know who the composer is, but there are certain kinds of harmonies and major and minor chords and major and minor themes that play on each other that is a part and parcel of this love affair. And that in a certain way, when we stop on June 26th, that's going to be the beginning of the real retreat. And we'll no doubt pick it up down the road at some point. But this is kind of like the lab following the theoretical part of the course, which has not been a theoretical course, but it's not a course at all. But each one of these times that we've been together is, in some sense, its own seamless whole. And yet there is some kind of, I hope, deepening process that goes into this practice, this love affair, because you're coming back and because you're practicing on your own, that is so precious and so uncanny. And so I feel aligned with possibility that I am really looking forward not only to these 2 weeks, but to the coming months of us being in touch in other ways, perhaps silently, without the internet or with the internet or whatever. But that the retreat now is an all hands on Spaceship Earth retreat. And it will be what it is in relationship to a unbelievably rapidly changing set of circumstances we find ourselves in. I just love this. I mean, I really do. In spite of all the suffering and all the pain, which is just heartrending. But what I love is that we're seeing people stand up who have been silent for ages and saying, no, honesty, integrity, justice. I can't use the verb in English trumps anymore, but supersedes any attachment to a particular kind of grasping to what was and which benefited the small me, the small I, so that I didn't have a problem. So the world is very different. We are very different, and we need to love that difference, I would say. We need to love that difference. And I feel like for those of us who are on this daily gathering, you can feel the love. And you can see the difference. And you can feel the difference. And what I've been trying to say from the very beginning is we can also make a difference. And that could be by non-doing, by doing nothing. I'm not advocating you get out there on the barricades or do anything that's not yours to do. But there are an infinite number of wise ways, of mindful, heartful ways to work this interface, body, mind, heart, world, such that when you drop in, when you fall awake, the entire world's already different, as I've been saying till I'm blue in the face. And I'll continue saying it. The world's already different, some small but not insignificant way. And we're seeing that everywhere in the world. And may it continue. So Soren, how about we, I don't know if you have anything more you would like to say on top of that, but we'll just continue with our form. And the dialogue being in some sense the richest, the most beautiful part of this. So let's see who has their hand raised.
Wonderful. And if you want to raise your hand, if you click on participants, and then at the bottom, you'll see a way to raise your hand. And please know there's more hands every day raised than we have time to do, but trust that we'll hopefully get to you. And also just to note that Tuesdays and Thursdays, we will continue to have our community small group gathering. So that will be Tuesday and Thursday of this week and Tuesday and Thursday of next week. And also know that if you're picked, your image will show up on the internet and will be visible to both people here and beyond. And I'm seeing Alexis, I believe, Goodil. Let's see. Welcome, Alexis. I believe you're unmuted. Where are you calling from? And question, thought, reflection, sharing?
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. I'm Alexis. I'm calling from Estoril in Portugal. Hello, Jon. I know we don't have to take it personally, and I don't take it personally, but I am extremely thankful for the retreat, for Soren and Jon, for everybody. I must say, first of all, that to be part of this community was a fantastic experience. I discovered mindfulness and your work, Jon, 15, 17 years ago, sometime after the death of my father. And it's French, David Servan-Schreiber, who made people in France, I'm Belgian, people from French-speaking discovered in Europe partly mindfulness thanks to his work.
Yeah, je connaissais David.
Yeah, he was a very, very, very important, very nice guy. And I'm using a lot the mindfulness session that you have made with Bernard Giraudot. So I practice with the ups and downs. I think those 12 or 13 weeks that we have been in lockdown in Portugal, I think to attend, I managed to attend almost every day the retreat. I've learned a lot. And as you said, many times it's about forgetting me, myself, and I. And one of the things that caught my attention is that in the beginning, I was not always sure that all experiences would touch me or interest me. But in fact, there was so much to learn from any testimony or question. So it has been very enriching. And I must say, I'm dreaming for 25 years to find an opportunity to follow a retreat with you, Jon, in the US. And now I have retreat with you in my house every evening.
Right.
That's incredible. And
Yeah.
so for that, I'm listening, and I have a communication with you that I never imagined I would have. And I can tell you that now every morning when I wake up, I am aware that I am breathing. And I breathe mindfully every morning. And I try not to do it only every morning. A comment yes, and a reflection is that I think those sessions, they help me to remain grounded, focused, to avoid to be absorbed in that hurricane of anxiety, depression, craziness worldwide. And I think the retreat helped me to keep connected to my part of humanity. And I must say that sometimes it's a bit like a wall. It's not about being smiling and say, okay, I'm compassionate, I accept everything. But I think it helped me to, how can I say, to avoid to be absorbed by all the negativity that is circulating.
Yeah.
You speak about your country, Jon, and I love the US. So of course I'm very worried about what's happening there, but there are plenty of worrying things happening in Europe, in the UK. Everything that happened with Cambridge Analytica, many countries who are losing progressively democracy, and it gives me the impression that, well, at the end of the day, the 30 or 40 years of peace we had in Europe, the last 40 years, it was more an accident in the history than something that maybe we believed it was there forever and since so many years. And my comment is about, my question to you is, you said, I think it was mid-May, you said something about thoughts, many thoughts. And one day you say, well, and what about no thoughts? Or what about no narrative? And that reflection is, I keep thinking about this because actually you said something that relates to a kind of an illness today. You need a narrative for everything. And everybody turns so interpretative that if I say hello to someone, the other may interpret, well, but why is this guy saying me hello? And I think letting the things being and taking the time to recognize what it does to us without panicking, without becoming sick. But at the end, I think, at least to me, it gives me even more decision willingness to face it, not to hide it, but to avoid to be drawn by this anxiety. So thank you once more.
Wow.
And I would like to thank everybody that has been sharing experience. I think it's a lesson of life every day for me.
Alexis, thank you so much for sharing that with us. I mean, it's really, in some sense, a blessing to hear it, you know, as a reflection. We, you know, we don't need to be perfect. Good enough it would be just fabulous. So all we need to do is sort of fine tune the instrument enough so that we can be discerning about when our narratives wind up imprisoning us or blinding us. And it's usually always, you know, that when we're not aware of the narrative, that's how we get caught in it. If we're aware of the narratives, then it's not that we don't need narrative. Of course, we love stories, we need stories, but we need something that's such a big narrative that we have to let go of those personal pronouns in order to, you know, sort of make it real, realize it. Thank you. You know, it's really nice to meet you like this.
Thanks.
Let's see if I'm seeing Louise. I can't pronounce your last name, but maybe you can help us with. Louise, welcome. I'm asking you to unmute. It looks like you're with us. Yeah, thank you so much. Where are you calling from? And again, question, reflection, comment, anything to share?
I'm calling from France.
Where in France?
I'm presently not very far from Paris, northern Paris, but I normally live in Brittany.
Okay, wonderful.
Okay, I'm a bit moved. I'm a bit surprised. So first, I wanted to thank you very much, the two of you, and also Jon Bashu, for these fantastic weeks and evenings we've been spending all together, and for all the people who have contributed. I have almost been there every evening, except a few evenings I couldn't. And it really, I had a wish when I was told that we were going to be sheltered. I had the wish that I could find a support, and really mindfulness was my first idea, and it immediately arrived. So it helped me a lot to navigate through the 2 months, but also it helped me to transform. And one of the transformation is that I'm an artist and writer, and I do lots of workshops with children or with any kind of people. And I always had refused to give workshops in prison because it was too difficult. It looked like too difficult for me. And during this 2 months, something transformed. And when I went back to this residency program I'm in now, I felt ready to work in a prison for a few workshops, and I will begin next week.
Wow.
So thank you, because it was so frightening to me, and then something shifted, and now I feel ready. I've been there once, and I feel ready.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. And do you wear protective covering, mask, and so forth, or how
For
are
the
they
prison,
taking?
yes, I have to.
You have to.
It's a small prison where they have lots of good programs. I was really touched by the people working here, and they managed to protect the prisoners from the COVID. So I have to be very careful not to bring the virus in the
yeah. But and you also have to protect yourself in case the virus is in the prison, because in the U.S.
Sure.
we worry about that a lot because it is there.
Yes. It looks like it's a very small prison in which they have protected the people.
Good. Okay.
So I will protect myself, and they will protect themselves, and it should work well.
Wonderful. Wonderful. I spent 4 years working in prisons in Massachusetts, and I can tell you that I usually felt more at home in prison than I felt leaving the prison, in the outskirts or the environments of the outside the walls of the prison. it's a very sanctified place to work with human beings, very often who really don't belong in prison, but the society in some sense did not come through for them very often from before they were even born.
Mm.
And so the levels of suffering and the levels of humanity are really rather remarkable in my experience in prison. And we were training people in mindfulness and studying its effects in the prison for 4 years in various prisons in Massachusetts. And must say I learned an awful lot from the inmates that I was working with.
Mm.
They taught me a lot about life and injustice and violence and different forms of violence.
I'm aware of that, and I've read and I've seen the video of the Compassionate Prison Project. Maybe you've heard of that. But the problem was that I was afraid of being locked in.
Yeah.
It was not about the prisoners, because I'm quite sure they've been suffering so much, and what I managed to heal through these 2 months is more my fear of being locked in.
Locked in. Okay.
And they won't let me go out after.
Yeah. Well, yeah. That's a very low probability event.
Sure, but the body
I
doesn't know it.
get
when
it. No, and also that's relevant to what we've been practicing here for the past 12 weeks is that we don't need outer prison buildings to imprison ourselves. Our mind is very happy to lock ourselves up in prisons of our own creation, the thoughts that Alexis was talking about and the habits of thought that remain unexamined. So how wonderful, Louise, that you're actually extending yourself in that direction, and even extending yourself in the direction of, your own fears, and then not letting them stop you. That's its own form of, liberation. I sometimes felt never felt freer than when I was actually working with the inmates, behind many different walls to get into them.
Mm. So I will maybe tell you.
Yeah, report back.
But I
some
feel
point.
that I have a lot of joy inside me since I visited the jail and the prison. I met the people. I really felt it was the right place to be for me.
And whatever it is that you're offering, art or reading, those kind, and meditation practice, yoga practice, I had the experience that was like giving food to starving people.
Mm.
Because prisons are such restricted, punitive environments that, people are really starving for one, just authentic connection from the outside. And learning is so much fun. And a lot of people, unfortunately, who wind up in prison, they did not ever have a very positive learning experience when they were in school as children. So you're going to give them a first taste of the beauty of learning.
Yes.
Have fun. And
yes, and I want something, because since a few weeks I had one, not really a question, but still it's a question before I went into this discovering. Maybe you've talked about that. One day one evening, it was evening in France. I was not there, but I'm really concerned with the question of gender mindfulness for gender questions, because I assume it's the same in the United States than in France. Most of the first frontline workers are women.
Yes.
Like maybe 85 or 90% of the people in the hospitals are women. People in shops are women. Teachers are women mostly. And at home, most of the work has been on the shoulders of women during the confinement. Sheltering.
Right.
There has been amount of violence, domestic violence during the sheltering in France and probably everywhere. So I think it's important to say it, that women are really, because most of the time we say people and we don't see that women are having the whole world on their shoulders. And during this period of time, they really have had the world on their shoulders. On the same time, you have 90 or maybe 85% of the women having the world on their shoulders on the front line. And if you and if you look in the governments and in the big at the top level of companies, it's exactly the contrary.
Yeah, it's all men.
Yes, 10% of women maybe. And also I was very surprised in this Zoom to see that there is a huge majority of women. Yoga classes, you have a huge majority of women. In other mindfulness groups or Buddhist groups like Plum Village, or it's a huge majority of women, like 90% or 80%.
Yeah.
And so they are having the world on their shoulders, and they're the one who are practicing mindfulness the most. So I'm really wondering whether what's going on there. Where are the guys and why they are not here with us? I mean, us women. And is there in mindfulness, and I never heard of that, people who are really trying to bring this question of our bias that makes us blind on this huge overrepresentation of women.
Yeah, and asymmetry. It's a very profound asymmetry. It's always been true in MBSR too, that it's like about 66% women in the classes and 33% men. You know, the doctors are referring their patients, but twice as many women as men. I'm so glad you brought this up. You know, that this is another fundamental kind of lens that we need to hold up to reality and name what's going on. And often, as you're saying, the women do enormous amount of the work out there in the world, but they don't get the credit, the power, the money that the men are getting. Well, this is the kind of fundamental asymmetry that why should that not be an object of attention in the meditation practice? Why should that not be right out front in the dialogues in the meditation centers? Why should that not be, you know, an absolutely essential inquiry as to the nature of what we're all engaged in? Because if we don't pay attention to what's right in front of us, but we don't see, we can talk about mindfulness until we're blue in the face, but the injustice or the asymmetries that could lead to either by omission or by commission, a certain kind of subtle violence, or sometimes not so subtle violence towards women, just gets ignored. And it's not that different from all the other forms of injustice, racial injustice, social injustice, economic injustice, gender injustice, and it's not just binary gender anymore. So we need to really, you know, take into account that some people are what's called gender fluid, or you know, that they have different ways of describing themselves and even different pronouns that they use. So this is, as I've been trying to emphasize from the beginning, all part of the curriculum. Unfortunately, I can only be my male incarnation to whatever degree that's possible. So I try to be as aware as I can be that, yeah, it's inevitable that what's coming out of my mouth is being filtered in ways that I may not even have any awareness of, although I try to, that may be, you know, not so sensitive to not just the asymmetries, but the injustice and the violence that you're pointing to.
Yes, and I would add, and because I feel it really on a personal level, that because it all, this question came to me because I really had 2 migraines at the very beginning of the Zoom sessions while reading books about violence against women, and I noticed that I accumulated traumas since
Right.
I'm a little girl.
Of course.
And I noticed that it's really in my body.
Yep.
And that's, for me, it's very difficult to hold this, because it's so big that if I open the box, I began to open the box, but the box is so full that it's re-traumatizing me. And I think that in mindfulness, there is also this, I mean, when a group is meditating together or working together on the mindfulness approach, that women in the room are not in the same situation, not all the women, but lots of the women might have accumulated traumas that have been denied, because there's also this denial, this permanent denial. No, it's not this. You're exaggerating, and it's not so bad, and all this denial, permanent denial. And sometimes in meditation groups, there's also denial. But still, the body is
meditation groups are not immune.
Yes, exactly.
From ignorance, from ignorance and delusion.
That's why I wanted to bring this topic today to really remind everybody, men and women, that there are books like
Thank you.
Mindfulness for Race and Mindfulness for Gender is important too.
Thank you. I just received in the mail from one of my women colleagues, MBSR teacher, a book, The First Free Women, Poems of Early Buddhist Nuns. So, even in Buddhism, there's a huge asymmetry between who has the power, who gets to eat first, all sorts of things that, are almost unbelievable, all in the name of liberation. So these are very, very, that's why the landscape of mindfulness is itself a kind of laboratory for self-inquiry, transformation, and growing. And if it wasn't, it wouldn't be of any use. It would be sitting in some museum someplace or in some temple. And so thank you, Louise, for bringing that up. That I'm sure speaks to pretty much everybody in one way or another in this community. And that means, obviously, we have our work cut out for us, all of us, the men and the women, and everybody who, is identifying in one way or another in terms of their gender. And what could be more beautiful than that be part of this renaissance that we're, I hope, trending towards.
Yes, I would love it.
So thank you. And just to say that since you're in France, the ADM, or the Association pour le Développement de la Mindfulness, I think that's a pretty much women-run organization. But
the funny thing is that even women organizations, they sometimes have a big denial on these questions.
Okay, so
it's not enough to be a woman.
When you're finished in the prisons, you can work on the ADM.
Okay.
Or do them on parallel tracks, whatever. But I'm just being playful. But, of course, we all need to do that work, just the way we all need to exercise the muscle, so to speak, of mindfulness writ large. The places where we're so blind, we need each other to point out what we don't see, because we're never going to see it in our own quiet meditation practice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Louise. Jon, we're at the hour.
Let's go for one more, let's stretch it, because actually there's no authority in charge. I mean, we get to decide, right?
Sure.
We'll go for one more.
No guilt. This will be up on YouTube later for you to watch.
Sure.
And want
If
to
you
stay?
have to leave, for sure.
Azide, hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Welcome. Where are you calling from? Oh, let me just see. I'm asking you to unmute now. All right, I think you're with us. And if you can correctly pronounce your name, and apologies.
Yes, my name is Azadeh. So I usually tell my friend, I'm from Iran, but I live in Canada now. Okay. But I haven't been born in Iran, so I have been in different places. So you can call me Azadeh, like Azadeh. Very nice to see you here, Jon. And I'm very blessed that I have this opportunity to talk to you. It's funny that we talked about lab and delusion.
We just lost your sound.
Let me see. I'm asking you to unmute. I think you accidentally muted. So.
Okay. Is that okay now?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So in advance today, I apologize because English is not my first language. So if I just talk something, if you don't understand, just let me know. So my question was about delusion, because we talked about lab and going back to reality and how to continue our world. I'm a neuroscientist, but I might be biased because I also, these days, I have MS. So I'm biased physically and psychologically. So I want to know what is delusion, because
Delusion, are you saying?
yeah, delusion. You were saying that we are suffering from our delusion, hatred, and greed.
Yes.
But for example, when I sit for meditation, when I listen, when I look, when I sense, all these circuits and pathway that we were talking about coming to my mind, that it's not really reliable. What I see is not the reality. So it's like, to my eyes, nothing is real. Even when we see something, I know that something else is going on. When we are breathing, I know what circuits are now activated, and I know that, wow, all these things. So two things comes up when I do meditation, which is first, what is real, and second is my curiosity is always on the way. So it's like it doesn't let me liberate, or maybe it liberate and it goes back to another question or another burning question. Oh, what happened if this happens? I don't know if I'm talking, if it makes sense or not, but I need a little bit of guidance from you to see how should I conduct at least my career pathway in order to be helpful for not only for myself and my curiosity, which is unraveling the brain, but also for other people. And how can I put that in a mindful way? I'm trying to write a review paper regarding this mindfulness, COVID-19 and breathing pathway, which is my specialty, but it's short term. How can I conduct that to a long-term pathway?
Did you say that breathing is your specialty within neuroscience?
Yeah, cardiovascular and breathing.
We need that big time. So first of all, nice to connect with you.
Thank you.
And you're asking a very profound question. Are you still there? I just want to make
Yeah,
sure.
I can hear
Okay,
you.
because your picture is frozen, but as long as you're not, you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, good. So this is one of the things I've been pointing to from the very beginning, that when you start to formulate models in your mind and start inquiry around those kinds of questions, like what is delusion, what is true, what is a kind of, you can easily fall into kind of the tyranny of thinking, which kind of has a sense that you'll be able to think this through and tease out what's most important, and then come up with a kind of aha moment of realization where you'll understand the framework. That's almost impossible to do with thinking alone. That this is, it's not that it's not important. I mean, you couldn't really do neuroscience without thinking, the same way you couldn't invent an fMRI machine without understanding physics and thinking about reality.
Mm-hmm.
But you're bringing up a very interesting question about the nature of reality. and what is mere appearance, or what is mere narrative or modeling. And those models are always like, you know, in a sense, iterative, in the sense that, you know, it's like a never-ending series of mirrors, you know, that are reflecting each other back and back and back. And where do you land? So it's a very profound question. And what I would like to suggest is, rather than giving you some dime store answer in the few minutes that we have, I'll point you to a couple of places where I think you might find it really not only illuminating to start at these places if you haven't discovered them already, but also profoundly provocative in ways that could be model breaking within your thinking framework. So the first one would be a book with 3 authors from MIT Press called The Embodied Mind by Francisco Varela and Evan Thompson and Eleanor Roach. And the second edition came out in 2016 or 17, I believe. And it's about the interface of cognitive neuroscience, phenomenology, and mindfulness, Buddhist meditation. And Francisco Varela is the founder of the Mind and Life Institute, and a really polymath Chilean scientist who did most of his work in France at the École Normale Supérieure, I think, or the École Polytechnique, probably that one. And Evan Thompson is an extremely, you know, profound, gifted philosopher. And Eleanor Roche is a great, you know, psychologist, scientist. The other book is even more far out and more recent, and it's by a fellow named Donald Huffman at the University of California, Irvine. And it's called, you'll love this, The Case Against Reality.
Oh, okay.
The Case Against Reality. And he is actually claiming to have sort of developed mathematical models for seeing the mind as an interface driven by evolutionary development. And so it's effective for developing what are called fitness payoffs in his terminology, like we evolved because it paid off, that we lived long enough to have children. But it doesn't necessarily give you a completely veridical analysis of the outer world or the inner world. Just take the example of, say, which I like a lot, the compound eye of a dragonfly. Well, dragonflies do amazing things, but the world that they see, you know, which their eye is made up of hundreds of little mini eyelets. I don't know anything about dragonfly neuroscience, but they cannot be seeing the world the way humans see the world. But they see the world well enough to have lasted for maybe 1 billion years on this planet, where we're only, you know, a few million years or 100 million years old or something like that. So it's a question of like, well, what is veridical and what is reality and what is good enough? And then is there a kind of ultimate reality? So this book, I think, will pull the rug out from under all your constructions, maybe give you a whole series of headaches, but at the same time satisfy something that it feels like you're really already in, you know, having insights around the kind of limitations to the way we use language in describing interior experience, so to speak. And that's, I think, it's an ongoing, unfolding adventure, just like mindfulness. So there's no final outcome where we say, yes, this is what can be said about the nature of reality so far. But in conventional daily life, you know, seeing the fleeting expression of pain or of interest on a child's face, for instance, that's about as veridical as you need to be. you know, to live life fully, or on the face of any other human being. So there are certain ways in which, whether it's appreciating nature or appreciating the true nature of each other, that there's such a range of potential for using the apparatus that we have with the brain that we have and the breathing and cardiovascular system that we have and the body that we have. We haven't even scratched the surface of whatever the multidimensional map is of what we're equipped to actually do. And from that point of view, delusion is really when you forget that and then believe some story that's only giving you a partial truth that betrays the full dimensionality of what we're given, what's given, you know.
And we yet don't know about that.
That's why I'm emphasizing so much don't know mind, the knowing of not knowing, the awareness of how little we know, but how much we actually attach to our thoughts and build models that we then believe are true, whereas they're only tentative hypotheses. And often our hypotheses are so partial that a good scientist shouldn't do this, but we do it all the time. It's like we believe the things that affirm our hypothesis and we negate all the things that don't affirm our hypothesis. And those things are other people that would then wind up othering because they're not like us. So it has profound implications on the social and political and economic level, as well as on the level of neuroscience and the deeper questions of phenomenology and the nature of mind and reality. I love that you asked this question. It's very brainy, it's very heady on the one hand, excuse me, but it's also goes straight to the heart of our humanity in a certain way. And so I bow to you for your engagement in this on a lot of different levels, because we need scientists who are willing to stretch the envelope in a really authentic way about what our true nature truly is, and investigate without prejudice.
Can I I want to clarify that for myself to see if I get you correctly. So is that okay? Because maybe I can say that there's a Persian poem that say that our job is not to unravel the mystery of a rose, but is to be afloat on its mystery. If I just translate
Which
that.
one of your Persian poets said that?
He's a contemporary poet whose name is Sohrab Sepehri. He has been very well known.
I only know Hafiz and Rumi and Kabir.
Yeah, and also Rumi
quite
says,
limited.
I'm not the person who has been 1 second ago. I'm not the person who you seen and painted 5 minutes ago. So it's like ever changing. So my question is that I want to integrate my brain with my heart, but I don't usually have this how to say, calmness to accept the reality, because I question myself, like because of the question and the curiosity that comes up. So sometimes I say to myself, like, good for people who has this prejudice, because they can be calm on that and they can meditate on whatever they believe. But because I don't believe in whatever I gain now, because I know there is more, therefore there is no peace, or maybe there is peace, but then it change, So how can I integrate while I meditate, shut down my brain, and then
You can't
accept
shut
that?
it down. That will just give you a headache. Oh, it's a wonderful question. Just let it flow. Okay, sit by the bank of the river and let it, do itself.
Yeah. Okay.
I can't really answer your question and you wouldn't want to hear the answer, but basically it's to not believe everything you think. You know, in fact, I used to have a bumper sticker that had the word everything crossed off and said, don't believe anything you think. To a first approximation, okay? Because you have so many other multiple intelligences. So let's close out the day, and I'll leave you with a poem by Rumi, which is one of my favorites. And again, you're so resonant with this. Don't drive yourself question with answers. Just stay with the question for the next 15 or 20 years. Okay. And then you won't drive yourself so crazy when you're meditating, because it like a burbling brook, and it will just do what it does. And don't sit there with a pad and paper and take dictation from that part of your mind. Just let it burble. And if there's some profound illuminating insight arises, you'll remember it. If you don't, it's not worth remembering. Okay. So the poem goes like this. Today, like every other day, we wake up empty and scared. Okay? This is 900 years old, this poem, but doesn't it resonate? Like, we wake up empty and scared. It's like, you know, pandemic or no pandemic. Today, like every other day, we wake up empty and scared. Don't open the door of your study and begin reading. Take down a musical instrument, closest one being the body. Let the beauty we love be what we do. There are hundreds of ways to kneel and kiss the earth. Today, like every other day, we wake up empty and scared. Don't open the door of your study and begin reading, even the books that I just recommended to you. Take down a musical instrument, the body in the present moment. Let the beauty we love, be what we do. There are hundreds of ways to kneel and kiss the earth.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have fun with that.
Thank you.
And then, you know, I can give you the names of all sorts of neuroscientists that you would probably have so much fun dialoguing around these things with. Okay. And they may be contacting you because some of them are on this call, I'm sure. And, you know, so there could be a little subgroup of people who want to talk about these things, but don't want to get imprisoned by the talk.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or the thoughts. Okay. So Soren,
Thank you so much. I am going to, if you go into gallery mode, you can now unmute yourself and say goodbye in any and all languages.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
It was great.
Obrigado.